I can write anywhere. I can write curled up in a corner in a spare armchair in somebody's house. I write on the Madison Avenue bus. I write all over the place. Always have been able to. In the bathtub, I can write anywhere.
In the library?
I can write in the library. I write in the library I wrote a lot of Goldfinch in the New York Public Library, in the Allen Room of the New York Public Library, which was wonderful.
And is that because there's reference books, or what makes the public library so good to work in? I mean, I know a lot of writers would be, I imagine, horrified to be in a kind of public space.
I love if you need a character, all you have to do is look up people walking back and forth, and it's like being an artist sketching at a sidewalk cafe. The people walk on characters, everybody you need is right there. And you know, of course, books, this was a book for which I had to read a lot.
But do you have a routine? If you're at home, for example, if you're in the countryside, do you have a routine? Do you write every day?
Every now and then life will intervene, but unless I write every day, and even if I have guests, I will slip away to my little room where I work, and always, yes.
And you're an inveterate note taker as well, then?
I do. I carry a notebook with me wherever I go, because if I don't write it down when I think of it, I'll never think of it again. And most of my notes are, Joan Didion uses the phrase, bits of the mind's string too short to use. And so many of my notes are just bits and bobs and little magpie gleamings and glintings, and they won't really ever turn up in any piece of finished work.
And what about at night? I mean, are you a night writer?
Oh yeah, I do. A night writer, I like that. Yeah, I do. It depends. If I've had a hard day, I'll quit. I'll knock off. I'll go do something else. But if I'm on a run, if I'm doing well, I'm like a gambler. I don't want to get up from the table.
You have written, then, if you're saying you write every day.
I do.
Then you've more or less written solidly for the past 21 years.
I have written solidly, yes, but I've written solidly in scraps. I mean, not every day do I sit down and write a tremendous block of finished prose, but I'm always fiddling around and writing little bits and bobs of things. And some days when I'm out and about and with my notebook in a pocket, it is only bits and bobs. When I say that I can write on the Madison Avenue bus, I don't mean I'm writing pages of finished prose on the Madison Avenue bus, but things will occur to me and I'll jot them down. And very often they're the germs of things that will become pages of prose. That's writing too.
For Donna Tartt, instant success wasn't quite so quick. Her first novel, The Secret History, took 9 years to write, but it set off a bidding war among publishers, which is virtually unprecedented for a new author. An instant bestseller, The Secret History is winning praise for combining a savvy literate style with an edge-of-the-seat plot, and we are pleased to have her here with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
How'd you do it?
Worked every day.
Yeah.
Worked every day for 8 years.
You've always wanted to write, and for a long time?
For a long time, ever since I was a little girl, I always loved to read books, and I thought, what a wonderful thing if I could just read books all day. But writing is even more wonderful because it's a deeper level of involvement. You know, when you're reading a book, you're very caught up in it. But yes, writing a book is one step beyond. It's one. Yeah. It's a depth lower. It's
Was
wonderful.
the first love fiction or poetry, prose or poetry?
Well, when I was a little girl, my first love, storytelling.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a Southerner, you know this. Southerners
Sure.
love to tell stories, love to listen to stories. I mean, and then when I was in high school, when I was a bit older, it was poetry. All my favorite writers were poets. But
Did you dream of being a poet?
Oh yeah, and still do.
Yes.
In vain.
Show me a successful novelist, and I'll show you a wannabe poet.
Well, it's true. I mean, in order to be a good poet, you have to have an ear for language so fine that to a novelist it's really almost diseased. I mean, and I just can't help it. I mean, I have just a real narrative sense. Things present themselves to me as stories. I see, if I try to write a poem, if I try to concentrate upon images too heavily, a narrative will just always impose itself.
Yeah.
Are you really, though? You seem quite balanced to me.
Well, I mean, Well, I mean, you're encountering me when I've just finished a book, not when I'm in the middle of one. Maybe I wouldn't seem quite so balanced if you'd seen me while I was working.
In the same way that you actually hit great streaks, have you hit bad streaks?
Of
Thinking the last 50 pages I have to strike.
Absolutely, absolutely. There was a point in this book where I realized I had taken a bad turn, and it was just about 8 months of work. And I realized to really get to where you need to go, sometimes you must run through the other options. There was no way that I could have gotten to that point had I not spent those 8 months. They're invisible, they're not in the book, but I needed to spend them in order to be to get to where I was, yeah.
Now, you're also a substantial, often quite brilliant literary critic. When you write about other fiction writers, do you then become professor more, or are you still the empathetic novelist? Do you inhabit the skin of the novelists you write about? Try to figure out how they're doing, why they're doing what they do?
Sometimes. When you do a review, you get to sort of look back over the previous books, and you get to sort of take a little course in that author and then write a kind of paper on it.
Who's a writer exceedingly different from yourself, whom you admire but know you could never be? The sort of opposite writer of Lorrie Moore.
Oh, well, I always, it's the same answer for who do I admire. I always say Alice Munro. I think of her as writing very differently from me, and I could never do what she does. But I just love what she does. I'm in awe of it.
Something lost.
Right.
Did you develop a kind of theory of reviewing, of sort of what a review should be or have, or there's so many different styles as I think about it. Sometimes a reviewer tells you the whole story, the book, or sometimes it's just at the edges of it and telling you more what he or she knows of the subject.
Right. I have no rules whatsoever, but I sometimes like to insert myself in the review a little bit so that there's a bit of personal essay in the review. Especially in the later reviews, there's more of myself in there, because it's sometimes interesting to see where a movie or a book actually fits in a viewer or a reader's life. So the intersection of a real life with the narrative is sometimes interesting. Yeah. So my son is in there, some friends are in there, other things are in there, as well as the film or the book.
Yeah, but do you think of the reader in a different way when you're doing a review, because you're?
Well, you know how this is as a journalist. You're kind of writing for your editor.
Yeah.
So that's really your first reader.
That's who you're thinking of as your reader.
Kind of, and then beyond that, who knows? Then it's you assume that your editor will be the ideal first reader.
So what do you see when you, were there surprises when you went back about things that you wrote about? You started off by saying Silvers he didn't think about taste. Do you think about taste? Do you think about your taste?
Well, I don't think about taste, I think about interest. Is this interesting?
Uh-huh.
And there were things, for instance, that I was interested in, such as Stephen Stills, that other people wouldn't be interested in because he's not that current.
He's not that what?
Not that current.
I was having fun flipping through and looking at, and so Friday Night Lights comes up, and you're talking about at the beginning how most people don't really want to admit, or friends of yours, intellectual type, so we don't want to. Yeah.
Well, it's about high school football.
Right.
So people.
But it was great.
It was great. It was great. Really was wonderful, and it holds up. I've gone back to look at it.
Yeah.
I don't know if my piece holds up, but the show holds up.
Well, actually, that's what I wanted to ask you about, things holding up, because when you're reviewing and you're doing it for 35 years, there's always the question of, does the book hold up? Does the movie hold up? What about when you went back to the reviews? Have you?
Well, I hope so. I mean, there's something about reviews. I mean, reviews are a conversation with the culture, and it's a record in real time of
Yeah.
things that you're interested in and others are interested in,
Yeah.
and in the conversation about those things. And so one hopes that that's important and that keeping a record of that is of interest. It's of interest to me. I love reading old reviews,
You
old
do?
film reviews and book reviews. I absolutely do. You can see so much going on in them that registers the daily life
Yeah.
of the reviewer.
Yeah. But what about as a writer who reads, who loves writing? I mean, when you go back, have your ideas about, or has what excites you about writing changed? So that if you read some of these earlier ones now, you think you'd see them differently, or?
I don't think so. I don't think I would. I think that even 35 years ago, I was a writer.
Yeah.
And I was reading Nora Ephron and looking at her sentences and looking at what she did with her particular story. And I don't think my opinion would change at all.
Yeah.